I never thought the quiet hum of my office late at night would become the backdrop to a moment that changed everything. Usually, Thanksgiving week in our city meant empty streets, closed doors, and a rare silence that almost felt like a holiday itself. But for me, the quiet didn't feel peaceful this year. It felt pointed, like a reminder of something missing. That I sat at my desk, staring at the glowing screen, pretending to work even though I hadn't typed a real sentence in nearly half an hour. It was the Wednesday evening before Thanksgiving. Most people had already gone home to their families, buzzing with excitement, carrying pies, bags of groceries, or little gifts for hosts. My coworkers had left hours ago with cheerful waves and warm wishes. "Enjoy your break, Leo. Say hi to your family for us." I only smiled, nodding. I didn't have the energy to explain that there was no break for me. No dinner waiting, no family gathering, no invitations. Not this year. The MY family had always celebrated Thanksgiving in a loud, chaotic, affectionate chaos. Mom would cook enough food to feed an army. My sister, Mia, would decorate the entire house with pumpkins and scented candles. Even though Thanksgiving was not technically her domain, she treated every holiday like a personal mission. And I always brought dessert, the only dish I could manage without burning down the kitchen. But this year, for reasons nobody bothered to explain, I hadn't been invited. It wasn't an accident. I checked. The group chat had been active for days. Pictures of the turkey, updates about who was bringing what, discussions about seating arrangements. At one point, Mia posted a picture of the dinner table with little handmade name cards. I zoomed in on the image, scanning every card like some desperate treasure hunter. Mom, Dad, Mia, her husband, Daniel, their kids, even extended cousins who lived 2 hours away were coming. But not me and Leo. No card set at the table. That I had waited, thinking maybe someone forgot to message me directly. That maybe they thought I wouldn't care. But then the day arrived and not a single call or text came through. The truth sat heavy inside me, like a stone pressing on my ribs. It wasn't a mistake. They didn't want me there. I tried to bury myself in work, pretending it didn't sting. I told myself I was an adult, that families argued, that misunderstandings happened. But none of that eased the ache of being left out of something that had always been ours. Even now, hours after office hours had ended, I remained in my chair, clicking aimlessly through emails. The building was nearly empty except for the security guard downstairs and the cleaning staff who'd sweep through later. My office's overhead lights hummed softly, flickering every few minutes in a way that had annoyed me for years. Tonight, the flicker was barely noticeable compared to the heaviness inside me. My phone buzzed. For a fleeting moment, I hoped it was someone from the family asking where I was, saying they were waiting, apologizing, anything. But the screen showed a reminder from my calendar. Thanksgiving, office closed tomorrow. I sighed, dropping the phone back on the desk. I wondered what they were doing right now. Was Mom seasoning the turkey? Was Mia arranging her perfect centerpiece? Was Dad sitting in his armchair reading the newspaper like always? Did anyone even realize I wasn't coming? No, they hadn't invited me, so obviously they had planned for everything without me. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my eyes. The screen blurred. I pushed myself up, deciding I might as well go home. A silent apartment was waiting for me, leftover pizza in the fridge, and a movie I didn't really want to watch. But it was something that I grabbed my coat, slung it over my arm, and turned off my computer. The soft darkness that settled in the room somehow matched my mood better than the harsh white light I walked out, locking the office door behind me. The hallway was dim, lit by emergency exit signs. The elevator dinged quietly, its doors sliding open slowly. I stepped inside. The smooth descent down the floors felt longer than usual. When the doors opened to the lobby, I stepped into the echoing marble space. Only the security guard, Rick, sat behind the desk. "Working late again, Leo?" he asked, adjusting his cap. "Yeah," I forced a smile. "Just tying things up before the holiday." "You not heading out of town?" "No," I said simply. "Just staying around." "Well, have a good one anyway," he said kindly. "Thanks. You too." I headed toward the main glass doors, watching the chilly November air swirl outside under the streetlights. I shoved my free hand in my pocket, bracing myself for the cold. But just as I pushed the door open, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. "Leo." My name echoed in the marble lobby. I turned. Running toward me was someone I never expected to see here, my brother-in-law, Daniel. His coat was half-zipped, his hair messy as if he had rushed out in a panic. His eyes scanned the lobby until they landed on me with clear relief. "Thank God you're still here," he said, slightly out of breath. I froze, gripping the door. "Daniel? What are you doing here?" He stopped in front of me, catching his breath. I needed to find you. Find me? I frowned. Is everything okay? Is something wrong? He shook his head, then nodded, then shook it again, clearly tangled in urgent emotions. Everything's not okay. And it's my fault. Actually, it's everyone's fault, but mostly mine. I stared, confusion swirling. What are you talking about? He looked around, lowering his voice even though the lobby was empty. You weren't supposed to be left out, Leo. You were supposed to be invited. All this entire mess, is a misunderstanding, and I need you to hear me out. My grip on the door loosened. That misunderstanding, but no one had contacted me. No one asked where I was. Nobody had even hinted that something was wrong. You're saying the family didn't purposely exclude me? I asked, though my voice carried a mix of hope and guarded disbelief. Daniel shook his head firmly. No, they think you're upset with them. And I may have said something that made it worse. But Mia's been crying. Your mom has been pacing the kitchen all day. And your dad, well, you know he won't admit it, but he keeps checking the driveway like he expects you to show up. I blinked. This didn't make sense. Not a single bit. I don't understand, I said quietly. They didn't invite me. Nobody said anything. I thought they were mad at me. No, Daniel said quickly. The invitation was sent. You didn't respond. And then I said something stupid. Really stupid. And it made them think maybe you didn't want to come. My heart thudded painfully. Sent where? I didn't get anything. Text, he said. In the family chat. I read the chat. I said sharply. The name cards. The plans. There was no message for me. Yes, there was, he insisted. A week ago. Mia asked everyone to confirm. You didn't reply. We assumed you didn't want to be there. I shook my head, feeling that ache turn into confusion. Check the chat again, Daniel. There is no message asking me to confirm anything. He inhaled slowly. I know, because I deleted it. My entire body went still. You what? I deleted the message. He repeated, guilt flooding his voice. Mia wrote it while she was using my phone that morning. Later, I was cleaning up old notifications, and I accidentally deleted it. Not just for me, for the whole group. My jaw dropped slightly. You deleted it for everyone? He nodded. So nobody else saw it? I asked. No one, he admitted. And they thought I ignored them? I whispered, yes. Everything inside me twisted. How could you not tell them you deleted it? I asked. I panicked, he said honestly. I didn't want Mia to think I was careless with her messages. And then it spiraled. She said you weren't responding. I thought maybe you'd reply later. But you didn't. And then she started thinking maybe you were mad about the argument you and your dad had a few months ago. That argument was nothing serious, I muttered. Not to you. But they thought maybe it was. And I didn't correct it. I didn't say anything at all. And when Mia asked me if maybe you weren't coming because of her, I said I didn't know. God, I wish I had handled it differently. Silence stretched out. I just stood there stunned. All this time, I thought my family had intentionally pushed me away. But instead, they've been hurting too, because they believed I was the one who shut them out. And now, Daniel said softly, your mom's sitting with a plate with your name on it, saying she doesn't feel right eating until you walk through the door. He paused. Mia hasn't stopped crying. She thinks you hate her. My throat tightened painfully. And your dad, Daniel hesitated. He thinks he pushed you too hard that day. He hasn't said it out loud, but I can tell he's blaming himself. I swallowed, trying to process all of it. So they want me there? I asked. They need you there, Daniel said. And I need to fix what I messed up. That's why I drove across the city to find you. I felt the cold air from the open door burst into the lobby again, brushing against my face. And you came to my office? I asked softly. I went to your apartment first, he said. Your lights were off. I figured you might be working late. I know you're always here when you're stressed. He wasn't wrong that I let the door close behind me, stepping away from it. So, Daniel said, voice thick with regret. Will you come home with me? They're all waiting. Dinner hasn't even started yet. Your mom refused to put the turkey in the oven until I brought you back. The image nearly broke me. After everything, they were waiting, not celebrating without me, not ignoring me. Waiting. I thought they didn't want me. I whispered. Daniel shook his head. No, Leo. They thought you didn't want them. We stood in the empty lobby, the weight of misunderstanding hanging between us. Finally, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Let me get my coat, I said quietly. Daniel nodded, relief washing over his features. And together, we stepped out into the cold night, toward a Thanksgiving I never expected to have. The cold air outside hit me like a wave as Daniel and I stepped onto the street. The night was unusually quiet for the night before Thanksgiving. Even the traffic seemed thinner, the usual honking subdued. A A soft wind brushed against the buildings, rustling the few leaves that had managed to cling to the trees. Daniel motioned toward his car, the same old silver sedan he'd had since he married my sister. It was parked haphazardly along the curb, as if he'd stopped without thinking. I could practically imagine his frantic driving as he tried to find me. "I wasn't sure I'd catch you," he said as he unlocked the car. "I wasn't planning to leave for another few minutes," I replied. "Good," he said. "Then I'm lucky." We climbed inside, and the warmth of the heater was a welcome contrast to the outside chill. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The car lights cast a dim glow across the dashboard, highlighting the tension etched into Daniel's face. He pulled out of the parking spot slowly, merging into the quiet street. I stared out the window, watching the city pass by in streaks of yellow and orange from the streetlights. "I really screwed up, Leo," Daniel said finally. "I know," I admitted softly, though my tone wasn't harsh. "Just honest. But I didn't mean to," he said quickly. "You know that, right? I mean, I would never intentionally make you feel left out. Your family." The word tugged at something inside me, something bruised but not broken. "I know you didn't do it on purpose," I said. "But you should have told them. Or me." "I was stupid," he agreed. "I thought it wouldn't matter. I thought you'd respond eventually. And then when you didn't, everything snowballed." I could hear the guilt in his voice. It wasn't performative. It was genuine. I sighed, leaning back into my seat. "I just can't believe they thought I didn't want to be there." "They were confused," he said. "They thought maybe you were still upset about the thing with your dad." I shook my head. "I wasn't upset. Not really. Your dad doesn't know that," he said. Silence filled the car again, but heavier this time, filled with unsaid words and old wounds we both avoided poking at. The argument with my father months ago had been small, at least small to me. He had criticized my career choices, saying I wasn't pushing myself hard enough, that I was wasting potential. It wasn't the first time he'd said something like that, and usually I brushed it off, but that day had been different. I'd been exhausted from work, stressed about a project deadline, and overwhelmed in general. When he said it, I snapped. Told him he didn't understand the pressure I was under and that his expectations were suffocating. He'd gone quiet, unusual for him. We didn't talk for days afterward, and though we eventually moved past it, the tension remained like an invisible thread stretched too tightly. Maybe he thought I still held it against him. Maybe they all thought that. I rubbed the back of my neck, staring at the passing buildings. I wish someone had said something. I wish they just asked. "They wanted to," Daniel said as he turned onto the main road out of downtown. "Your mom brought up calling you at least 5 times today. But they thought giving you space would be better." Space. The word tasted bitter. Unintentional or not, it still felt like distance. Like being forgotten. "And Mia?" I asked, curiosity and worry blending together. "Why is she upset?" "She thought she offended you somehow," Daniel said. "She kept replaying your last visit in her head, trying to figure out if she said something wrong." "She didn't," I said firmly. "Y adore Mia." "I know," he said, "but she didn't." The idea of my sister crying because she thought I didn't want to be around her made my chest ache. "I never wanted her to think that," I said quietly. "She'll be so relieved to see you," Daniel said. "When she realized you weren't joking about not being in the chat, she spiraled. Then your mom spiraled. And then your dad. Well, he pretended not to spiral, but he definitely did." I almost smiled. Dad had always been terrible at hiding his emotions that we drove for a while in silence, the city slowly thinning out as we headed toward the suburbs. The farther we went, the more familiar everything became. The houses, the small shops, the quiet roads. Each one tied to memories of years I assumed would never change. But they had changed. We all had. When Daniel finally turned onto our family street, a strange tightness formed in my chest. Every house was lit with warm yellow windows. Wreaths hung on doors, strings of lights glowing in early holiday preparation. As we approached my parents' house, I saw it immediately. The warm glow spilling from inside, shadows moving behind the curtains, signs of life and warmth and everything I'd missed. But what made my breath catch wasn't the house. It was the figure standing outside on the porch. My mother, wrapped in her shawl, pacing nervously, glancing up and down the street like she'd been watching for something or someone. Her arms were folded tightly across her chest, worry etched in her posture even from a distance. Daniel slowed the car, easing it into the driveway. Before he even stopped the engine, the front door burst open and Mia rushed out. Her hair was tied messily in a bun, her sweater slightly stained, probably from cooking something, and her eyes were puffy and red. But the moment she saw me through the window, she froze. Then her hand flew to her mouth, "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice muffled even through the closed windows. Daniel put the car in park and I sat there, staring at my sister, my chest tightening with something I couldn't fully name. "You should go out first," Daniel said softly that I swallowed, nodded, and pushed the door open. The cold air rushed in, but I barely felt it. Mia stood at the top of the small porch steps, trembling slightly. For a moment, she didn't move. She just stared at me like she wasn't sure I was real. "Leo," she said, her voice cracking. "I'm here," I said. That was all it took. She rushed down the stairs, nearly tripping in the process, and flung herself at me. Her arms wrapped tightly around my neck, squeezing with a desperation that surprised me. "I thought you were mad at me," she sobbed. "I thought you didn't want to come. I thought I did something." I hugged her back just as tightly. "You didn't do anything. I never thought that." She pulled back slightly, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. "Why didn't you say anything?" "I didn't get the message," I said. "And when I saw everything happening without me, I thought maybe you didn't want me there." Her expression broke completely. "Leo, no. God, no. How could you think that?" "Because nobody said anything," I said honestly, "and I didn't want to make it awkward." She shook her head fiercely. "You could never make it awkward. You're my brother." Her arms tightened around me again, and I hugged her back. Behind us, Mom stood frozen near the doorway, watching us. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Dad appeared behind her, his usually stern face visibly softened, concern etched into every line. Mom stepped forward hesitantly. "Lau." I pulled away from Mia, meeting my mother's gaze. And suddenly I was 10 years old again, standing in the doorway after getting lost at the mall, looking into the eyes of the woman who had searched for me like her world depended on it. "Hi, Mom," I said, my voice thick. She didn't say anything at first. She just walked toward me, slowly, carefully, like she was afraid I might disappear if she moved too fast. Then she wrapped me in her arms. The warmth of her embrace broke something in me. Something tightly held, something scared, something wounded. I felt tears sting my eyes as she held me, her hands trembling slightly. "My boy," she whispered into my shoulder. "I thought you were angry. I thought you didn't want to come home." "I didn't want to," I said quietly. "I just thought you didn't want me." She pulled away enough to look at my face, her thumb brushing a tear from my cheek. "Never, not a single day, would we not want you." Dad cleared his throat behind us. When I looked at him, he didn't smile, but his eyes were softer than I'd ever seen them. "You should have called," he said in a gruff, shaky voice. "You should have called me," I replied. For a moment, we just looked at each other, both stubborn, both flawed, both hurting. Then he stepped forward and placed a firm hand on my shoulder. "You're here now. That's what matters." Mom nodded, pulling me close again. "Come inside, sweetheart. The food's almost ready." Daniel hovered near the steps, guilt still hanging on him. I gave him a small smile. "We're good." "Good," he sighed dramatically. "Because if Mia had cried one more time, I would have drowned." Mia threw a damp napkin at him. "Not funny." Daniel dodged it poorly. "Very funny." Despite everything, I found myself smiling, really smiling. For the first time that day, as we all walked inside together, I felt the warmth of the house wrap around me like a long-lost blanket. The scent of turkey and spices filled the air. The dining table was set beautifully, candles lit, dishes lined up, and, sure enough, a place card with my name, carefully written in Mia's handwriting, sat waiting on one of the chairs. I stood there staring at it for a long moment, letting the sight sink into me, that a place for me. Always meant for me. Just waiting, but I took a slow breath, the heaviness inside me finally loosening. Maybe misunderstandings could be mended. Maybe families, even imperfect ones, found their way back to each other. And maybe, just maybe, this Thanksgiving wouldn't be one of loneliness after all. It might become something else entirely. The warmth inside the house felt almost unreal after the cold outside. I stood just inside the doorway for a moment, soaking in the familiar hum of my childhood home. The soft glow from the chandelier illuminated the living room, revealing framed family photos on the walls, memories layered over the years. Some pictures felt like they belonged to another lifetime. Birthdays from when Mia and I were little, family road trips, and old-school events where Mom made sure we were painfully overdressed. But tonight, everything felt different. There was a tenderness in the air, a kind of unspoken gratitude that wrapped around us like a blanket. I had missed this more than I wanted to admit. Mom gently tugged my arm. "Take your coat off, sweetheart. Stay a while." I chuckled softly. I wasn't planning to run, but she kept fussing, smoothing the fabric and hanging it carefully as if it were something precious. When she stepped back, her eyes glistened again. You're too thin, she said. Have you been eating properly? Emme, Mia groaned. He literally just walked in. Mom ignored her. He looks tired. Everyone looks tired, Mia said. It's Thanksgiving. Yes, Dad added from the side. But he looks extra tired. I'm fine, I said, unable to hold back a laugh. Really, they were the same. Unchanged. Loud and dramatic and worried and loving. And I love them for it. Dinner's almost ready, Mom said eagerly. I just need to check the turkey. And the pies. And the stuffing. Mom, Mia said, stepping between her and the kitchen. Sit down for 5 minutes. You've been pacing for hours. Mom put a hand to her chest. How can I sit when my son just walked in after disappearing like this? I blinked. Disappearing? You weren't answering, she said. We didn't know what was happening. Your phone kept going to voicemail. Oh, I winced. I muted everyone earlier, I admitted. I thought it would be easier if I didn't stare at the group chat. Daniel cleared his throat loudly, as if trying to redirect blame off himself. Right, about the chat, that whole thing. Mia shot him a look sharp enough to slice a loaf of bread. Not now. He raised both hands. Okay, later. Mom sighed. Everyone's worried because we care. I know, I said gently. I am sorry. Her expression softened immediately. You're home. That's what matters. Dad stepped forward with a subtle nod. Come into the living room. We saved the good seat for you. The good seat? I asked, raising an eyebrow. The recliner, he said, with the seriousness of someone announcing a royal throne. That's your seat, Dad, I said. He crossed his arms. Tonight it's yours. Something warm and indescribable stirred inside my chest that I followed them into the living room, where the fireplace glowed softly, crackling like a comforting whisper. The recliner was angled toward the fire, a knitted blanket draped over the armrest. I smiled. Mom had definitely done that part. As I sat down, the chair enveloped me with its familiar creak. The warmth from the fire rolled over me, untangling knots of tension I didn't know I still carried. Mia plopped onto the couch beside me, tucking her legs under herself. So, she said with a lingering sniffle, you have a lot to explain. I sighed. I know. Because, she continued, I thought you were avoiding me. And then I thought maybe you were avoiding Mom. Then Daniel said maybe you were avoiding Dad because of the argument. Daniel immediately shook his head. I said maybe. Mia didn't acknowledge him. And then Mom said maybe you had a secret girlfriend. Mom perked up. Do you? No, I said quickly. No secret girlfriend. She narrowed her eyes, but didn't push further. Dad cleared his throat. We just thought you needed space. I rubbed my hands together, staring into the fire. I didn't need space. I don't know. I guess I needed reassurance. Or maybe just clarity. When I didn't see a message from me, I assumed that we didn't want you. Mia finished quietly that I nodded. She shook her head, her voice rising. Leo, how could you think that? You're my brother. I've never spent a Thanksgiving without you. I know, I said softly, but it didn't look like I was included. Because of me, Daniel said under his breath. Mia's head snapped toward him again. You deleted my message? Daniel winced. By accident. I told you it was an accident. How do you accidentally delete a group message for everyone? She demanded. He threw his hands up. It was early. I was half asleep. You handed me your phone to check the weather, and I must have swiped the wrong thing. Mom gasped. You deleted the invitation? Dad muttered. This is why paper is better. Mia huffed and pointed at Daniel. We're talking later. Daniel accepted his fate silently. I couldn't help but laugh. It's fine. Really. The misunderstanding was all of us. I should have asked. You should have asked. We were all thinking something different. Mom reached out and touched my knee gently. You must have been so lonely. I swallowed. A bit. Her face crumpled. Oh, sweetheart. She leaned forward and hugged me again, squeezing so tightly I could barely breathe. But I didn't mind. Behind her, Dad stood awkwardly, shifting on his feet. He wasn't great with emotional displays. He never had been. But after a moment, he placed a hand on my shoulder. Not pushing, not pulling. Just resting there. A silent gesture that said more than he'd ever speak aloud. I didn't mean what I said months ago, he murmured, surprising me. About your career. You're doing well. Better than I did at your age. I'm proud of you, you know. I froze. Dad rarely said anything like that. If ever. When I looked up into his eyes, I saw sincerity. Vulnerable, quiet sincerity. Thanks, Dad, I said, my voice softer than I intended. I appreciate that. He nodded once, sharply, as if sealing an agreement with himself. Dinner, Mom announced suddenly, sniffing and wiping her eyes. It's ready. She hurried toward the kitchen, clearly needing something to do to calm her emotions. Mia leaned her head against my shoulder for a second. Don't ever think you're not wanted here. I won't, I said. Not anymore. You better not, she said, or I'll personally drag you next time. I believe you. Daniel raised his hand timidly. Should we do a group hug? No, Mia said immediately. Yes, Mom called from the kitchen. Everyone come here. Mom, Mia protested. Mom pointed a wooden spoon at her. Group hug. Now, we all shuffled into the kitchen. Dad grumbled. Mia tried to dodge. Daniel held his arms open dramatically. And Mom forced all four of us into a messy, uneven bundle that was half laughter, half squeezing, half tears. Perfect, she said with satisfaction when she released us. Now everyone wash their hands and sit down. The dining room table looked beautiful, maybe even more beautiful than in the picture I'd seen earlier. Golden candles flickered in tall holders. Plates gleamed under the soft lights. Silverware was aligned with military precision. And there was again .my place card. I sat down slowly, running a finger over the paper. It wasn't fancy, just a folded card with my name written in Mia's familiar handwriting. But the sight of it made something settle inside me. A place at the table. My place. Dad served the turkey. Mom fussed about whether the gravy was too thick. Mia passed bowls around like a seasoned host. Daniel cracked jokes at inappropriate moments and received kicks under the table for them. Everything was loud and chaotic and imperfect and wonderful. Halfway through the meal, Dad cleared his throat. We're going around the table and saying what we're thankful for. Mia groaned. Dad, we're too old for that. No one is too old for gratitude, he said firmly. Mom clapped her hands. I like it. Daniel nudged Mia. Ladies first. Mia rolled her eyes but smiled. Fine. I'm thankful for her family, even when they're dramatic and annoying and emotional. Mom pretended to gasp. Emotional? You cried today, Mia said. Mom threw a napkin at her. Only because my son wasn't here. Daniel laughed. I'm thankful for my amazing wife. And that Leo is here, so she'll stop crying. Mia kicked him under the table again. Mom said she was thankful for health, family, and finally having all her children under one roof again. Dad said he was thankful for peace at the table and glared at Daniel, who pretended to zip his lips. When it was my turn, the room grew quiet. I looked around the table. At my mother's hopeful eyes, my father's firm expression, Mia's wide smile, Daniel's expectant grin. I'm thankful, I said slowly, for this. All of this. For being here. For being wanted. For being found. Mom dabbed her eyes again. My heart. Dad nodded approvingly. Mia reached over and squeezed my hand. Dinner continued with laughter, stories, teasing, and the kind of comfortable closeness that only comes from people who share the same blood, the same memories, the same imperfect love. After dessert, when the plates were cleared and the candles burned low, I stepped outside onto the porch for some fresh air. The night was still cold, but softer now. The glow from inside spilled onto the porch, warm and golden. That I breathed deeply, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. That a moment later, the door creaked open behind me. Dad stepped out. I jumped slightly. Dad wasn't the follow outside to talk type, that he joined me at the railing, hands in his coat pockets. You know, he said after a long silence, I should have called you too. I looked at him. I could have called you. Yes. He nodded. We both could have. He exhaled slowly, breath fogging in air. Families, they don't always communicate well. But we try. That's what matters. Yeah, I said. We do. He glanced at me, his voice quieter. I'm glad you're home. That simple sentence warmed me more than the fireplace ever could. Me too, I said as we stood there together, letting the quiet settle comfortably. Eventually, Dad patted my back with a firm hand. Come in before your mother thinks we're fighting. I laughed. Okay. We walked back inside, the warmth wrapping around us again. The night wasn't perfect, but it was honest, healing, real. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged, and that was everything. The following morning, sunlight poured through the kitchen windows, casting long golden beams across the cluttered countertops. The remnants of Thanksgiving dinner, pies cooling on the windowsill, a half-empty casserole dish, and a few scattered napkins, spoke of the night before's laughter and closeness. I sat at the kitchen table, nursing a mug of strong coffee, feeling the warmth seep into my fingers as I watched my family move around me. Mom was humming softly, washing dishes at the sink with an almost content expression. Dad was reading the newspaper at the other end of the table, his eyes flicking occasionally to the TV where a quiet news program played in the background. Mia sat opposite me, scrolling through her phone but stealing glances at me with a shy smile. Daniel was perched on a stool near the counter, trying to balance a plate of pancakes while making conversation. It was strange, this feeling of belonging after months of isolation. After weeks of feeling invisible and distant, I took a sip of coffee, letting the bitter warmth settle in my chest. The events of yesterday played in my mind like a movie I hadn't expected to star in anymore, but had suddenly been handed the lead role again. That I could still remember Daniel's frantic drive across the city, the nervous urgency in his voice, and the look of relief when I agreed to come home. I remembered Mia's tears and my mother's hugs, the silence between Dad and me that finally gave way to small, honest words that I was home, but I wanted to hold on to that feeling. So, Mia said, breaking the comfortable silence, "What are you doing tomorrow?" I looked up, surprised by the shift from the usual small talk to something more intentional. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "You?" She smiled. "We're going to visit Grandma. You should come." I hesitated. Grandma's house was a small, cozy cottage on the edge of town, filled with memories from my childhood. It was a place where everything felt slower, gentler, and safer. But I hadn't been there in a while. Years, actually. "I'd like that," I said. "Great," Mia said, eyes shining. Daniel nodded approvingly. "Grandma always makes the best cookies. You'll want to bring your sweet tooth." I laughed softly. "Besides," Mia added, "you need to catch up with her. She keeps asking about you." The mention of Grandma brought a pang of nostalgia. She'd always been the glue holding our family together in subtle ways. Quiet, wise, and loving. As we finished breakfast, the conversation drifted to plans for the rest of the holiday weekend. There was talk of movies, board games, and maybe even a hike if the weather held. It felt like a family reclaiming its rhythm, one piece at a time. Later that day, I found myself wandering through the house, taking in the little details that had once been so familiar. The framed photos, the worn sofa cushions, the creaky floorboards beneath my feet. That I stopped by the living room window, looking out at the backyard where the early signs of winter were starting to show, the last of the leaves clinging to the branches, frost starting to lace the grass. The quiet made me think about everything that had led to this moment, about the silence between my family and me, about the misunderstandings and the walls we'd built. I realized how much I'd let those walls grow, how much I'd let pride and hurt keep me from reaching out. But now, standing there, I wanted to tear those walls down that I wanted to rebuild. That afternoon, I sat down with Mom in the cozy sunroom where the afternoon light filtered through sheer curtains. She was knitting a scarf, her fingers moving with practiced ease, and she smiled warmly when she saw me. "Thinking about Grandma's tomorrow?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm glad you're here, Leo," she said softly. "It means the world to all of us." Her words felt like balm to my soul. "I'm sorry I let things get so tangled," I admitted. She reached out and took my hand. "Families are messy, but love is patient." I squeezed her hand in return. Later, Mia pulled me aside while Dad napped in his recliner. "Leo, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you want to stay? Not just for the holidays, but longer?" Her question caught me off guard. I thought for a moment. The idea of moving back, of rebuilding what I'd left behind, was tempting and terrifying all at once. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "But I want to try." She smiled, relieved. "Good, because you're stuck with us." That night, as I lay in the guest room, my old bedroom converted into a guest space, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that the past didn't have to define the future. That broken pieces could be mended. The next morning dawned crisp and clear. The promise of a fresh start felt tangible as we piled into the car to visit Grandma. The ride was filled with laughter, teasing, and stories from Mia and Daniel about their recent adventures. Grandma's house smelled like cinnamon and fresh bread, and when she opened the door, her face lit up with genuine joy. "Oh, my dear Leo," she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug that felt like coming home. She ushered us inside, where the kitchen was warm and inviting. The table was already set with cookies, tea, and homemade jam. As we sat around the table, Grandma listened intently as we recounted the week's events. She smiled knowingly at the way we all spoke, words filled with a new kind of understanding and love. Afterward, we took a slow walk through her garden, now quiet and bare, but still full of life beneath the surface. Grandma spoke softly about patience and forgiveness, about the strength found in family bonds, no matter how stretched or frayed. Her words stayed with me long after we left back at my parents' house. The days passed in a rhythm that felt both new and comforting. We cooked meals together, watched old movies, and sat around the fireplace, sharing stories. One evening, as the fire crackled and the house grew quiet, I found myself sitting next to Dad. He looked over at me, a rare softness in his eyes. "I'm proud of you, Leo," he said simply. "Thanks, Dad." We sat in silence for a while, letting the words settle. In that moment, I understood something essential. That family wasn't about perfection, but about showing up again and again, even when it was hard. Thanksgiving had brought me back, not just to a place, but to the people who mattered most. And maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something better. The days after Thanksgiving passed with a gentle rhythm that felt almost foreign to me. The tension that had hung between my family and me was gradually dissolving into laughter, shared meals, and quiet moments of connection. I could see it in my mother's eyes, the relief and happiness of having me back. In Mia's teasing remarks and sideways glances filled with warmth. Even Dad, with his gruff exterior, had softened, showing a tenderness I hadn't seen in years. I found myself waking up each morning feeling less burdened by the weight of misunderstandings and past grievances. The familiar sounds of the house, the creak of floorboards, the distant hum of the refrigerator, the soft murmur of the news on the television, became a comforting soundtrack to my days. One morning, I woke early, the soft glow of dawn filtering through the curtains. I decided to take a walk before breakfast, needing the quiet to collect my thoughts. I stepped outside. The crisp air filled my lungs, and I felt a surge of gratitude. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Walking down the familiar streets of my childhood neighborhood, I was flooded with memories. Riding bikes with Mia, playing catch with Dad in the yard, listening to Grandma's stories on cold winter nights. It was as if the past and present were converging, weaving together to create a tapestry that I was ready to embrace. Returning home, I found Mom bustling in the kitchen, humming as she prepared pancakes. The scent of cinnamon and vanilla filled the air. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she greeted me with a smile. "Morning," I replied, taking a seat at the kitchen table. Dad joined us shortly after, carrying a newspaper and a steaming cup of coffee. Mia followed, still rubbing sleep from her eyes, but smiling warmly. Breakfast was a lively affair, filled with chatter about plans for the day and jokes about who would burn the pancakes next. Later that day, Daniel and Mia suggested a family outing to the nearby nature reserve. The weather was crisp but clear, perfect for a hike. As we set out, the crunch of leaves beneath our feet and the chatter of birds overhead created a peaceful atmosphere. Walking alongside my family, I felt a sense of belonging that had eluded me for so long that we paused at a clearing overlooking a small lake, the water reflecting the sky like a mirror. Mia turned to me, her eyes bright. "I'm really glad you're here." "Me too," I said, smiling. Daniel chimed in. "We should do this more often." Dad, who had been quietly observing, nodded. Family time is important. As we continued our walk, we shared stories from our childhood, laughed at old jokes, and made plans for the future. That evening, as the sun set and the house grew quiet, I found myself alone in the living room, reflecting on the journey that had brought me back. The initial hurt and misunderstandings seemed distant now, replaced by a renewed sense of connection that I realized that families are not perfect. They are messy, complicated, and sometimes painful, but they're also a source of strength, love, and forgiveness. Later that week, we gathered once more around the dining table for a casual dinner. The conversation flowed easily, filled with laughter and warmth. Mom raised her glass in a toast. To family, flawed but unbreakable. We all echoed her sentiment, clinking glasses. In the days that followed, I began to consider what I truly wanted for my future. The idea of staying with my family, rebuilding relationships, and creating new memories felt more meaningful than any career ambition alone. One afternoon, I sat down with Dad in the sunroom, the golden light casting a warm glow. "I've been thinking," I said, "about making some changes." He looked at me expectantly. "I want to stay here, with all of you, to be a part of this family, not just during holidays, but every day." His expression softened, and he nodded slowly. "That sounds like a good plan." We talked for a long while, sharing hopes and fears, acknowledging the work ahead, but also the possibilities. Mia joined us, and soon the three of us were planning projects for the house, trips, and future gatherings. Daniel and Mom jumped in as well, their enthusiasm infectious. Life wasn't suddenly perfect, but it was real, and that made all the difference. Weeks turned into months. We celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and small victories together. We argued occasionally, as families do, but always found our way back to understanding point one evening as I sat by the fireplace. I pulled out an old photo album. Flipping through the pages, I smiled at the images of our past, reminders of where we'd come from and how far we'd grown, that I realized that Thanksgiving had been more than a meal or a day on the calendar. It had been a turning point, a moment of reckoning and renewal, that I was no longer the brother who felt forgotten or the son who felt misunderstood. I was part of something bigger, a family that, despite its flaws, loved me unconditionally. As the fire crackled softly, I felt a deep sense of peace. Home wasn't just a place. It was where love lived, and I was finally there,